Welcome to another episode of Growth Hacker TV. I'm Bronson Taylor, and today I have Rob Schutz with us. Rob, thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me, Bronson.
And
This is also Benji.
Yeah, it looks like you have a friend there. So this is Benji the dog. It's a
Yeah.
first. We've never had a dog on Growth Hacker TV.
Dogs are the original growth hackers.
There you go. They somehow found a way from being a stray wild animal to living in human homes. If that's not a growth hack, I don't know what is. That's awesome. So, in case you're probably wondering why you have a dog, it actually goes along with the theme of the interview here. You're actually the head of growth at BarkBox. So, start by telling us, what is BarkBox?
Sure. Well, BarkBox is actually part of our umbrella company, Bark & Co. So we have three different kind of main core products under Bark & Co., all devoted to dogs, as you can imagine. BarkBox is a monthly box of treats and toys. We're shipping to hundreds of thousands of lucky dogs across the U.S. and Canada. And then we also have two other properties. We have Bark Shop, which is kind of our retail e-com store where people can buy products from past boxes. We're also producing our own products and manufacturing those now, so those are available exclusively on Bark Shop. And then our third main product is Bark Post, which is actually kind of started as the blog for BarkBox and now has really morphed into its own media company. So we have about 15 people that work exclusively on Bark Post producing content. I like to call it all the hard-hitting dog news comes through Bark Post. And we're doing about 10 million uniques a month right now, and really putting time and effort into growing that as a true media property right now.
Yeah. So you have the subscription business, you have the e-commerce business, and then you have kind of the community media business. Internally, what's most important to you guys? Is it just all three equal, or is one of them the real big play and the other ones kind of support it? How do you guys see that business internally?
Yeah, traditionally to date, the box business has kind of been the engine that keeps everything moving, and I think it's unique in that people know the box business now. They understand Birchbox for dogs, or as I call it, Birchbox actually BarkBox for humans. But it's an easier foot in the door for folks, and then kind of introduce them into our community, and we're really focused on building the brand for dogs. We don't really feel like there are any brands out there that are specifically dog focused. There's a lot of players in the pet space. So we're really focused on kind of defining and owning the dog brand. So along with kind of the products there, we also have a lot of other kind of side test products that we try out. So we have one called Bark Buddy, which is on the App Store, which is Tinder for dog adoption. So you can kind of swipe left, swipe right, see dogs that are in your area available for adoption. Blew up, got featured on the App Store, got a couple million downloads. So crazy, but gone really well. And then we have a couple other properties in addition, as well as. Sorry, let me put him down.
As Benji leaves the interview.
Yeah, Benji's actually got another interview lined up here. We also have launched Bark Live, which is kind of our live events portion of the company. So we're doing lots of live events on a weekly basis here in New York, and then branching out into other cities as well. So we did like a Valentine's Day, speed dating, bring your dogs, get them to meet each other as well. We'll do kind of small ticketed events, Bark Hike we did last weekend, as well as kind of big buzzy events where we'll rent out like a big park in the middle of New York and do a movie screening for you and your dog. So so all things related to dogs, all these things that we're trying are based around how to keep your dog happy and healthy, and we're always open to try new things.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. All right, a couple follow-up questions based on what you just said. First, you said there's a lot of people in the pet space, but there was nobody owning the dog brand, and so you guys kind of niched down one more level. I think that's a smart play, because I think that a lot of people watching this, obviously they're not in the animal business. They're doing their own thing and whatever vertical they're in. But sometimes just niching down one more level is enough to own a position. And isn't owning a position infinitely better than being another player one level higher?
Yeah, for sure. I'd agree with that. I mean, there are challenges certainly that come along with that. There's it it does limit somewhat of what you're able to do, like on the content side, or, we get asked all the time, are you rolling out a box for cats? Are you rolling out a horse box? We don't really get that all the time. But are you broadening out into other animals? And because we're staying very niche, it does force you to focus on those areas. So yeah, I'd agree. It's certainly helpful in that it doesn't get you too involved in like traditional players in the space. But at the same time, it has its own set of challenges as well.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other thing, you talked about all the events you're doing, the live events and the meetups and those kind of things. And it reminds me a lot of like what Salesforce did back in the day. They were all about like outside, real people, humans coming together, making noise, making an event, just, the hoopla of the whole thing. And it seemed to really work for them. For you guys, do you do it because it's a good marketing play, or do you just really enjoy hanging out with dog people? Like, or is it both? I mean, bottom line, does all this stuff actually matter is my question.
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. The live product is actually profitable for us right now. We sell tickets to all of the events. Mm-hmm. It was really born out of more kind of customer requests and demands than anything. Like, the event started with, I think one of our first events at our new office was like, we did a meetup, a golden doodle meetup. So we have like, I'll talk more about it, but we have a lot of famous dogs on Instagram who kind of work with the company and help represent us. So we have one golden doodle. It's like, I want to get 50 golden doodles together. And we said, let's do it at the office because it's pretty amazing for like social. We did a big campaign on content pieces around it. So it kind of grew out of that. And then eventually, as we got more requests, like we want to do a Shih Tzu meetup in LA. We want to get together at Central Park at 9 o'clock, before on leash hours start. And then we were fortunate enough to get some really, really smart folks. The lady who leads our events team led events at Kickstarter and Foursquare prior to that. So really knows how to engage a community. And as you would imagine, the dog parent community is very passionate. And so that is going very well so far.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, I was just wondering, because, both are financiers. Sometimes you just do it because you like the community. Sometimes, it's good for business, and both can be valid. I noticed that you call yourself the head of growth, or that's the position you were hired for there. Is that, in your mind, different than being a marketer or something else? Is there something specific that you have in mind when you say, I'm the head of growth, as opposed to something else?
Yeah. That's a good question. So, I mean, growth in our minds really means more than like managing channels. It's really, my main priorities are growing our subscriber counts, building revenue, getting new viewers to the content sites, etc. But overall, it's about growing also like the presence of the company and the brand. So we've invested a lot of time and money and resources into certain channels and certain programs that don't necessarily bear fruit right away, but are just great overall for the brand. Yeah. Those are things that are much harder to do if you're like a pure play CPA-driven marketer. A good example is with our Instagram account. When I started that back in 2012, or actually my wife started in 2012, as she will remind you. There wasn't like a direct, you should buy a BarkBox, go to BarkBox.com, use coupon code Instagram. It was kind of like, if we want to own the dog space, which is really our mission, we need to be present in these areas where our potential customers are. So in a lot of what we do, we are just trying to kind of entrench ourselves as the people who know dogs and understand dog parents. So, Instagram, we built that account over the course of 2 years without really doing anything in terms of monetizing it. But by just kind of being very organic and being very honest about what we're doing and not pushing like our own product, we're able to really quickly grow that account. And so I think we have like 750,000 plus followers right now. And a lot of people know us because of our Instagram account. They're like, oh, I know you guys. I saw that, that silly dog video you put up. And we're like, great. Do you have a dog? You should buy a BarkBox. That's kind of those soft introductions, which sometimes are harder to substantiate up front, but that eventually can kind of pay dividends for you down the road. Yeah. So I think growth for us encompasses a lot of that too. So there are outdoor campaigns, there are partnerships, there are direct mail campaigns that we do that we hope result in subscriptions and revenue. But because we have this long-term goal of being the people who own the dog space, it's important to get the word out about that and promote ourselves that way.
Yeah, and it seems like in a lot of companies, the things you're telling me are two different teams. They have the direct CPA, that team focus on channels, and then they got the community, the brand, the marketing, kind of over here. And they may talk, they may not. It depends on how well the company's ran. But it seems like you're kind of embodying both in a sense, that you actually see all of that. And I like that. I think that's rare. But I like that because I feel like that's the way I am. I understand brand. I understand positioning, but I can also jump in and run a Facebook campaign. And I feel like that gives you just a leg up because you don't put too much emphasis in the wrong spot. If you have a hammer, everything's a nail. If you do direct response, everything's direct response. If you do marketing and branding, everything's branding. But really, both matter. I mean, the best companies have both.
Yeah, I think part of it is a byproduct of how the company has grown. I was lucky enough to be a very early employee, and brand versus channel market, that's all under one seat. So for us, even when we do some of these broader campaigns, we do like to anchor things back to like CPA targets and goals and things along those lines. But there's more tolerance for like a higher CPA or spend that doesn't quite get us where like a scalable acquisition channel would. And I think you're right. It gives you good flexibility because you can see the bigger picture.
Yeah, totally. So right now, how big is the BarkBox subscriber base? Or what numbers can you give me? I don't know what's public, but what can you tell me to give me an idea of the size?
So we're shipping hundreds of thousands of boxes a month right now.
Wow.
And that only continues to grow, especially as we get closer to the holidays. BarkBox makes a great gift. Anyone looking for a gift for their mother-in-law? And
there's the direct response Rob coming out.
Yeah, there we go. That's right. I can just throw a coupon code in there. Growing really rapidly, and as we've grown, also have spent a lot more time and energy on retention and kind of plugging the leaky bucket when it comes to subscription. So, hundreds of thousands on the subscription side, and as I mentioned, on the content side, we've grown from a few thousand a month now to over 10 million uniques on BarkPost.
Yeah, and you said you got involved early on, so was it kind of just a handful of subscribers when you started and you kind of watched this rocket ship, or?
Yeah, so when I joined in 2012, we were shipping, it was early, probably doing a few thousand a month.
Okay.
The founders had the story where they said they walked around with iPads and got people to sign up. I don't know if I believe that or not, but yeah, I mean, it was very friends and family to start, and then we were lucky in the sense of being early to a lot of channels and a lot of tests that really helped us scale.
Gotcha. So what were those? I mean, you got to tell us now. What were the things you got lucky with there?
Sandwich boards and skywriting. I come from a background in daily deals. That's what I had my own daily deal company prior to joining BarkBox. And so the first couple things I did were trying the things that I know, like any good marketer would do, like try the winners you saw in the other space. So, did things like got search and display going and retargeting, optimizing the email sign up on site, and then started playing in some more paid channels. So, did some dedicated email blasts, like reaching out to all the, dog publications and pet publications, and, you can pay your way into a dedicated blast with those guys. And then started tinkering around with a lot of different channel tests. So the big one that we latched onto early in 2012 was Facebook, which I'm sure your audience is very familiar with. But we were very lucky in the sense that we were early there when it was a bit less competitive. And that was the first one where we kind of ran a campaign and said, okay, there's something here. Like let's put some serious money against it and see how this grows. And luckily, dogs plus Facebook has been a fruitful combination for us.
No, that's awesome. It's interesting, the little kind of a spiel of all the things you rattled off you tried. The banners, the retargeting, the email marketing, just all that stuff, and then eventually the Facebook ads. It's a very like tried and true list. I mean, that's kind of where you started with those kind of things. It's not like there's 100 things to try on day one. There's about 5, and you named them. But your story, I see that so often. Some of them matter, some of them don't, but one of them really matters. Like one of them is the channel that you're ready to, put more money into, put more time into. Do you feel like the first job of the growth person is just figure out the thing that's working way better than everything else? Is that kind of a good first goal for somebody in a startup?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a step maybe prior to that where you make sure you kind of get your baseline in place, where you have an email list. The sign up is there. Like before you start actually paying or driving any traffic to your site, you want to make sure you've got your retargeting tags in place from even if it's just Google display. You want to make sure email is there and is optimized. You want to make sure you have a welcome series to people who sign up. There's a few pieces you definitely want to have in place, and then you kind of slowly start layering in the traffic and see what kind of comes out of it. And I'm a big fan of like planting lots of seeds. You're trying lots of tests. Mm-hmm. Many of them will fail. You have to be kind of comfortable with that and comfortable with the fact that you're paying for these tests that may not work out, but you're paying for the education that comes along with it. So for me, I'm always looking for like bright spots of, did we get anything out of a campaign? Like there's a lot of campaigns you'll try and you get like almost nothing out of it. So being aware and just vigilant of like, there's something here. Maybe we're at 4x what our CPA needs to be, but if we spend more time and focus on our energy on optimizing it, that it could become something meaningful.
Yeah, it almost seems like grit and resilience is such a big part of the package when it comes to growing a company, because there's so many things that are not working, but they're telling you something. And if you can stay with the whole thing long enough, you go, you look at year 2 and 3 and 4, and all of a sudden you've built up this body of knowledge and this body of experience, and you know what to try, what not to try. You have hunches that are actually based in data you've seen before, but they just feel like hunches now. Like I feel like if you can get through that hump of nothing works, that you can actually get something going as long as the product itself is good. Yeah,
I mean, that's a good point on a few levels. The product's got to be good. Like you can be the best marketer in the world, right? But you're not going to be able to sell if the product's not good. You're not getting support from your exec team. Your actual support team is not great. So we're very lucky that there's been investments in those areas. But I think to your other point, I mean, you also have to kind of expectation set with your CEO or whoever you're reporting to early on, where you're like, we're trying these things and they may not all pan out, but being on the same page there is pretty important, because you walk through your end of month and you're like, we just spent how much on learning, making sure you're aligned there. Then eventually you do have to find something that's bearing fruit, or else probably got to get that resume in order.
Yeah, exactly. So as you look back at kind of everything you've learned at BarkBox, the campaigns you tried that succeeded or failed, the things you did with the live events that worked or didn't work, whatever. I mean, broad spectrum here. What are the big lessons? Like the things that in 5 or 10 years, when you're on to another gig, starting your own thing again, doing whatever, like you'll take these lessons with you. They're that kind of fundamental ideas. Anything you've learned like that so far at BarkBox?
Yeah, well, one is don't bring steak into the office because you'll get attacked by dogs. I think what you were talking about before about trusting your gut is definitely true. I found as a takeaway, though, that sometimes I've relied on that too much, and I should not be trusting my gut, because there's actually some really good examples. Like we ran a campaign with Amazon Display Network when they were in beta, and it was like tailor-made for us, only targeting people who had bought dog food in the last month on Amazon, lived in the US. It's like, how could that not work, right? Mm-hmm. And it was a pretty hefty buy, and we saw almost no results out of it.
Really?
And so that was disappointing, and my gut said that should crush it. And the same when we actually did a sponsored headline and campaign on Reddit And that was very interesting, very vibrant community there. But we also
politically correct.
yeah, I'm a Redditor myself, and I wasn't sure if it would work, but we're taking some swings, and so we sponsored the subreddit Awe, which has a ton of traffic, a lot of cute pictures of the posts, and we got good engagements out of it, but not nearly what we needed on the CPA side. And I felt really good about those two ahead of time because it was such a qualified audience. But they just didn't pan out. And on the flip side of that, this we call them Bark Pack. We've built this huge community of dogs on Instagram and Vine and Facebook who are, some of these guys have millions of followers, which is incredible and amazing. And luckily, we've been able to tap into it. But instead of building like a traditional affiliate program where you're working with Commission Junction and Skim Links and basically kind of playing the coupon game, kind of burned that down and put a lot of effort into like individually recruiting these guys into our ecosystem, and that has been really strong. And given the issues with trying to get people to click out of Instagram or go from Instagram to somewhere else, that was very surprising to me. I did not think that was really going to work for us long term, but it's turned into now there's a team of 3 people on growth who exclusively work with our Instagram community.
Wow.
It's turned into a really major channel for us in terms of revenue and subscription. So I guess the first lesson is sometimes be willing to go against your gut and just see what the data tells you instead of doing what I normally do, which is like, oh, we've tried that, it's not going to work. Let's move on to something else, because there can be kind of diamonds in the rough there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then I think the other thing that I always tell people is don't underestimate the value of content. Super time consuming. As a startup, you don't always have the ability to just like bang out a blog post or 2 every week, but being able to be the leader and kind of establish your voice through your blog or a newsletter or whatever is really valuable. And it helps you lead collect and build your kind of warm leads without being too salesy right up front. Yeah. Getting that email address is still super valuable. Email is alive and well.
Yeah, it is. I know. It's interesting. 2 of the things you just mentioned that you've learned are things that are very time consuming. Building these strategic relationships, not just going to Commission Junction, clicking on a few people and blasting out links and coupons, but actually building a relationship. That takes a lot of back and forth, a lot of emails, a lot of time, a lot of knowledge of each other. And then the other thing is content. Like you said, there's no shortcut. It's hard to bang out a few blog posts. And yet those are the 2 things you're saying. They work, they matter, we double down on them. And I think that's good to hear that growth is very time consuming. I mean, end of the day, if you want to grow a decent-sized business, you're going to have to put a lot of effort into things that you don't want to put a lot of effort into, and there's not really a way around that.
Yeah, someone's got to put into the sweat. I guarantee you all these startups and a lot of the folks on your show have put in the time and effort and dealt with kind of the nitty-gritty of responding to influencers or shipping a product in order to get a review. Like, there's no shortcut to building a strong, robust community. Yeah. So whether it's you, whether it's someone on your team, whether you get a junior person who's kind of looking to cut their teeth, you got to go through some of those steps and you learn from it, you build on it, and it helps in the long run. It's hard to see that early on. But in addition to those things, in parallel, you have to be trying your traditional tests as well, because you got to kind of be showing results at the same time. But that's why you need to always kind of be testing your channels that are going to produce today, and then finding your channels that are going to produce tomorrow that may not be doing that right now.
Yeah, I like the way you just put that, because that's the way I think, but I've never really put it into words, that you're doing things for today, but then you got these other things kind of going. They're not in the back burner. They're just not getting as many resources, and you're just kind of seeing, what takes that's, going to be profitable in 6 months, a year, whatever. And then you're never at a spot where you wake up and you're like, our growth is dead. We have no plan. Nothing's, on deck. Like, this is it.
Yeah, you got to kind of build out the levers you can pull in case of emergency, right? It's like if all else fails, you got to break the glass, and you're like, all right, we're doing this dedicated email. I've got these partners who can promote a campaign for us. I've got
Absolutely
these
right.
influencers who can put stuff together, because you never do want to find yourself in that position where you don't know what's going on, you don't know why, and you don't have any plan for it. Because it's a scary spot to be in.
I think that's a mature way to think about growth. I mean, I know when I talk to my team, we look at, all right, what month are we in? What levers are we pulling now? What do we want to pull this month? If things go south, what are we willing to pull this month? And you kind of plan it, because you can't do everything today. It wouldn't work. You wouldn't have enough time to respond to all the influx of things happening. You have to really, have a pace that works with customer support, a pace that works with your infrastructure, a pace that works with your time, a pace that works with your investors. Like, you really are managing the levers. I mean, I think what you just said, there's a big insight there, and I'm trying to, put my thumb on it, that someone that's the head of growth, they're the head of levers, the manager of levers. Like, what, when, why, these are the levers, when do we pull them, I feel like that's really a big part of what we do.
Yeah. And I think another piece for us and for anyone that has a physical product is that coordination with production and operations and merchandising, because our merchandising team is ordering for December, January of next year right now, and so they're like, hey, how many new users are we going to get in December? So I don't know exactly, but you kind of round things out, and you figure out what your projection model looks like, and there's going to be misses. But you need to have some sense of like, okay, well, even if my regular channels don't perform in November, then I'm going to pull this referral lever over here that I know can result in X number of new users that can get us closer to where we need to be in case we're not there. And so it's a good thing to do from a growth perspective, but also from like a not having everyone hate you at the company perspective as well. Because a lot of people's jobs are reliant on you performing, your team performing as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a crazy thought how dependent everything is on you and how little you're in control of your own world. Those two things don't go well together, and yet that's where we find ourselves.
Right, it's true. Got to be comfortable with some ambiguity.
That is absolutely. All right, well, here's the last two questions. I like to end on these two. They're kind of fun. The first one is, what are you working on today as soon as this interview is over? And I ask that not because the answer is cool or clever. It might be like, I'm going to a meeting and it's super boring. But it just gives us a window into like, what are you actually doing right now when this is over,
Yeah. Well, first thing is I'm going to eat a salad. I have a salad waiting for me upstairs, so that's pretty exciting.
Eater. All right, a little more about Rob now.
Yeah, so later today, looking at the calendar, I've got a few one-on-ones with people on the team, walking through some planning and promotions with our Bark Good team. So they handle kind of all our relationships with shelters and rescues. So the campaigns we're putting together that are going to drive BarkBox and Bark Shop purchases. So we kind of calendar that out at least a month or two ahead of time, checking in there. Got a couple of vendor calls. Do a lot of vendor calls. Many of them result in nothing. But, figuring out tomorrow's channels today. That's the start somewhere. And then I've got to check in with finance to look at projections for Q3 in terms of media spend and inbound revenue. Got to manage that cash flow.
Mm-hmm. No, it's awesome. And then last question. It's been an awesome interview. So leave us with some words of wisdom. What's the best advice you have for any startup that's trying to grow? What would you say to them? And maybe it's something you've already said. Maybe it's something different. But what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I think the most important piece of advice is test a lot and expectation set. So kind of like I touched on before, expectation set that when you get into the role, you're going to be trying a lot of things and there will be a learning curve. But you need to kind of find that one channel or one series of events so you can hang your hat on at some point. That could be a weekend, that could be a month in, it could be 3 months in. But what you've learned in one industry is not necessarily going to translate into your other vertical. What I learned in deals, very, very small amount of that actually translated into wins for BarkBox. So you got to be just comfortable that you've got your analytics set up, that you've got your baseline of email and retargeting and all of your tags set up, but then be comfortable testing and comfortable when those things don't necessarily pan out.
Yeah. Well, Rob, thank you so much for a great interview. I feel like this is the kind of interview that if you want to see how growth is supposed to be ran, if you want to see the basic operational insights, I feel like this is a good, solid, fundamental interview on just how to think about growth. So thank you so much for your time, Rob.
Yeah, appreciate it.